Level 1, $0, the public defender. You are arrested on a Tuesday. Doesn't matter what for. What matters is what happens next. You sit in a holding cell for 6 hours before anyone tells you anything. When they finally do, it's a stranger in a wrinkled shirt carrying a stack of folders 3 inches thick. He introduces himself for 4 seconds and tells you he's your lawyer. He has 187 other cases this month. You are one folder in that stack, and he hasn't read yours yet. He reads it standing in front of you, right there, for the first time, while you wait to hear what happens to your life. Bail is set at $2,500. You don't have $2,500. You don't have $250. So you wait. Not for a trial, for a court date that's 11 weeks away, because the docket is full, and you are not a priority to anyone in that building. You lose your job in week 2. Nobody at the jail cares about that. It isn't their job to care. Your public defender meets with you for 11 minutes total before he recommends a plea deal. Not because it's the right call, because it's the fast call, and fast is the only speed the system moves at when you can't pay it to slow down. You take the deal. You didn't have a choice that felt like a choice. The system didn't decide you were guilty. The system decided you were poor, and poor moves through it exactly one way. Level 2, $5,000. The first real lawyer. Different arrest, different year. This time you have $5,000 saved, and you spend all of it in one afternoon on a lawyer who actually returns your calls. He's not expensive by anyone's standard, but yours. But he shows up. He reads your file before he meets you, not during. He tells you the charges, explains what each one actually means, and for the first time, you understand that the law is a language, and lawyers are the only people fluent enough to translate it for you. Bail is $5,000 again, this exact number, almost mockingly. You call your lawyer, he knows a bondsman. 10% down, $500, and you're out by dinner instead of by trial. That's the whole difference between level 1 and here. Not innocence. 10%. He negotiates. Not miracles, just negotiation. A real back and forth with the prosecutor's office that a public defender, juggling 200 cases, never had time to attempt with you. The charge gets reduced. Not dropped. Reduced. You still pay a fine you can barely afford. But you go home that night, instead of upstate. You start to understand something you didn't know at level 1. The law was never one thing applied evenly. It was always a negotiation, and negotiation has always required something to bring to the table. Level 3, $25,000. The retainer. This time you don't wait for an arrest to call a lawyer. You call one the moment you think you might need one, and that alone changes everything downstream. He charges a retainer, $25,000 up front, just to be available. Not to work the case yet, just to exist on standby, the way rich people keep a doctor on call. You've never paid for access before. You've only ever paid for outcomes. This is the first time you understand those are two different purchases. When the situation actually happens, a business dispute, contracts, the kind of thing that used to just mean losing and moving on, he doesn't panic. He pulls in an associate, then a paralegal. Suddenly it isn't one man in a wrinkled shirt with 187 folders. It's a small team, and your file is the only file any of them are thinking about today. The other side settles before it ever reaches a courtroom. Not because you were right, because your team made being wrong more expensive for them than settling. Justice, you're starting to realize, was never blind. It just charges by the hour to open its eyes for you. Level 4, $100,000. The firm. At this level, you don't hire a lawyer anymore. You hire a firm, and the firm hires people specifically so you never have to think about your own case again. A litigation strategist. A jury consultant. Someone whose entire job is studying human psychology, well enough to predict which 12 strangers will side with you before they've even been picked. An investigator who finds things the other side's lawyer doesn't have the budget to find first. The case drags for 14 months. At level 1, 14 months in the system means 14 months of your life gone. A job lost, a family strained past repair. At this level, 14 months means 14 months of billable hours, and you barely notice the time pass because your life outside the case never actually stopped. You settle out of court for a number that sounds enormous, until your lawyer explains, calmly, over lunch, that it's actually a win. You believe him, because at this level, belief is also something you're paying for. Level 5, $500,000. The war chest. Somewhere around here, the system stops looking like justice and starts looking like a war you can simply outspend. Your legal team doesn't just defend anymore. They attack, countersuits, motions designed purely to bury the other side in paperwork and cost. Not because the motions will win, but because most opponents can't afford to survive the war of attrition long enough to find out if they will. You watch, almost from a distance now, as a smaller opponent, someone with a real grievance, someone who might even be right, quietly withdraws their case. Not because they lost the argument, because they ran out of money to keep having it. Your team calls this a favorable resolution. You're starting to understand that in rooms like this, that phrase means something closer to surrender. Level 6. $2 million. The settlement before the headline. At this level, the goal is no longer to win a case. It's to make sure the public never hears there was a case at all. A situation arises, the kind that would end an ordinary person's career and reputation overnight. Your team moves before a single reporter does. A settlement is reached with a signature and a confidentiality clause thicker than the original complaint. The other party walks away with money. You walk away with silence, which at this level is worth more than any verdict a courtroom could ever hand you. Nothing about what happened changes, only whether anyone ever finds out it happened at all. You realize the justice system, at this altitude, isn't really a system of justice anymore. It's a system of containment, and you're the one paying to keep the walls sealed. Level 7, $10 million. The regulators call first. At this level, you find out about your own legal trouble before it finds you. A compliance officer on retainer flags a regulatory issue 3 weeks before any government agency does. And by the time anyone official picks up the phone, your team has already built the defense, drafted the statement, and rehearsed the apology that will make the whole thing disappear from the news cycle in 48 hours. An investigator calls to schedule an interview, politely, almost apologetically, and your lawyer is the one who picks the date, the room, and who else is present. You are never questioned. You are consulted with in advance about how the questioning will go. The fine, when it comes, is a percentage of what the violation earned you, not a punishment large enough to prevent it from happening again. Some of your peers at this level have started treating fines like this as a cost of doing business, a line item, not a consequence. You understand, uncomfortably, why. Level 8, $50 million plus. The system consults you. At the very top, the justice system doesn't process you anymore. It negotiates with you as something closer to an equal, or, in the rooms that matter most, as something closer to a client it needs to keep. Your lawyers don't just defend your interests in court. They help write the language of the regulations that will apply to people at every level below you. Lobbyists, policy consultants, former officials on retainer, all working quietly upstream of any courtroom, shaping the rules long before they'd ever need to be argued over. If a case does arise, it never reaches the public. It's resolved in a private room, with your name never printed anywhere, by people who used to work for the very agency now investigating you. The revolving door only spins for those who can afford the toll to walk through it. Somewhere tonight, a man is sitting in a holding cell. A stranger in a wrinkled shirt is reading his file for the first time. Standing in front of him, one folder in a stack of 187. 11 weeks until his court date. He doesn't have $250 for bail. He believes, the way most people are raised to believe, that the law is the same for everyone. He is about to learn, the way most people eventually learn, that the law was never one thing, it was always a price. And the only question that's ever mattered is how much of it you can afford to negotiate away.